Alright battlers, the hype for Obstagoon is real. Is it that good? In this video we take a look at multiple lead scenarios, give you some tips on how to use it, and how to maximize this new Galar Pokemon. Let's get right into these battles. On the left side of the screen, you will find BHaz's team, Obstagoon, in the lead with his Cresselia and his Giratina altered form. Now, I talked with BHaz after he sent me these battles, and he said that what he likes to do in the Cresselia lead situation is fire off that Night Slash, get an extra counter, and then swap into his own Cresselia to catch the Moonblast. So this is an earlier match. He was still perfecting that strategy, but as you can tell, if you don't make that swap, oftentimes you have to spin that shield early on the Obstagoon, and that could put you at a disadvantage early in the game. So he is more interested in risking the debuff rather than spending the shield. Guys, he switched into Cresselia, and I'm hearing so much hype about his opponent's swap into Gyarados. Is Gyarados the best safe swap in the Ultra League? What do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. I mean, the Dragon Breath is so oppressive, you don't have to worry about the Ancient Power threat like you did in Season 1. Just let me know what you think. Out comes his opponent's Obstagoon, so a different strategy than BHaz is using. Obstagoon not being in the lead here, being somewhere else on the opponent's team. He does land that Night Slash against Cresselia, and then BHaz force swaps into his own Obstagoon because he's got a lot of energy. Gonna go ahead and threaten with the Night Slash there. His opponent does shield. They reach, I believe, a CMP tie, and BHaz is gonna go ahead and shield this cross chop here, and then he is already locked in, so he's gonna fire off a cross chop of his own. That does do super effective damage, but that Cresselia comes right back out. You can expect the Moonblast, and it is. As you can tell though, Obstagoon able to survive one and still get to the Night Slash here. So many of these Ultra League Pokemon have such weak fast moves, and it allows you to kind of sneak in these extra charge attacks. Obstagoon gets the boost, but unfortunately it does get KO'd. Out comes the Giratina with the Shadow Claw, and this is going to charge really quickly. At this point, BHaz is actually going to allow this attack through. A little bit surprising to me that he didn't just kind of pull the trigger there. He does swap in his Cresselia to clear that debuff, but this Cresselia is just going to get farmed down, so he's absolutely got to go right for that charge attack, which he does, firing off that Dragon Claw, taking out Cresselia. Out comes the Obstagoon, and check out this insane bulk on this Pokemon. Giratina lands the Dragon Claw, and the Shadow Claws are still not enough to fast move it down. In comes a Night Slash, and this is a very close game. He's going to get off a couple more Shadow Claws, and that's going to seal the deal. Going to game 2, Obstagoon into Mew. Mew is extremely interesting, but I don't think it's really equipped to deal with an Obstagoon. His opponent makes a really funky switch here, going into Registeel. As you already know, this Obstagoon is going to do great work against Registeel. He's unable to get that shield with the first charge move, but he's going to go straight for the cross chop here, and that doesn't get shielded either. His opponent is going to get to a charge move here, but Obstagoon got a lot of energy together with that Mew, so I predict that he'll be able to fade the Registeel unless his opponent decides to shield. And he does decide to shield. He wants to get off that Focus Blast because he noticed that BHaz shielded the first one. He's going to try and rob him of his second shield before Registeel goes down. Now, at this point, his opponent is going to think things over. He does decide to come in with his, I believe that was a Cresselia. He's going to go straight for the Night Slash here. Or it's Mew, excuse me. Mew came back in, and the Night Slash does get shielded. A beautifully timed swap here by BHaz to catch Wild Charge. That Mew's defense just fell, and it did hardly any damage at all to Cresselia, and BHaz's team composition is just doing really, really good for him here. He did have, his opponent did have a couple Pokemon weak to Obstagoon, being the Giratina and the Registeel, but that is the core that you see so often in the Ultra League, and that's why Obstagoon is just so stinking good. I really wanted to make this video to kind of give you more insights about how to run it. I know there's a lot of hype about it. PokeAK did a video, King did a video, I had one yesterday, this is my second one on it. It's just such a cool Pokemon, and I might even have a third video coming soon that has a new twist on it, a new kind of strategy for Obstagoon that's actually really, really interesting, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. He's going to get another Moonblast here. Again, these fast moves just not doing much in the Ultra League, as opposed to the Master League where the Dragon Breath can be so oppressive. In the Ultra League, it really depends on these charge attacks. Dark Pulse on that Mew, super interesting stuff. Obstagoon is going to wrap that game up. Going right into this next battle, his opponent leads with a Giratina Origin form. Now this thing is going to get walled so incredibly hard by Obstagoon. His opponent has to swap out immediately. BHaz is going to try to catch the Hydro Cannon, but that Swampert does a great job of holding its energy, firing off the Earthquake on the Cresselia, and then he goes right for a Moonblast. You always cross your fingers for the debuff. and BHaz gets it. So this Swampert is nerfed. It's not going to do nearly as much damage as it would otherwise. He's going to absorb that second Earthquake no problem and push for another attack, but he's not able to get there. Maybe a little bit of lag. It's kind of hard to tell in these Go Battle League matches, but his opponent makes a swap, which is a little bit curious to me. He does come in with the Registeel here, probably just trying to clear that debuff on the Swampert, and then BHaz comes in with his Giratina. On its face, this might look like a mistake, this might look like a bad swap, but the reason I included this battle is to show you the insane closing ability of Obstagoon later on in the game, especially when it's got a shield. So this Giratina is going to kind of duke it out with the Registeel, going back and forth with these charge attacks, not doing much to either side, but his opponent does make a swap here in just a moment. Oh, there it goes, right into that Giratina origin form. He's going to go ahead and unleash the Dragon Claw here. His opponent force swapped again, so it's safe for BHaz to swap and not lose switch advantage. He does come in with Obstagoon, and that Giratina is going to get walled so hard. A little bit of a curious decision here by BHaz, but I think he's just protecting against the condition that his opponent does have Dragon Pulse. So at this point, there's no reason to shield it at all. Another Ghost type attack comes through. Ominous Wind does barely anything. One shield even, and he's going to go straight for this cross chop here against the Registeel. His opponent does not shield. Out comes that Swampert, and he's going to go straight for the Night Slash. If he gets the boost, it's over. I mean, it's already pretty much over. He goes for another Night Slash. Obstagoon with residual energy is just really out of control. He does still have that one shield here, so he is going to spend it on the Obstagoon, absorbing that Hydro Cannon, firing off a few more counters here, and he's able to farm down. Out comes the Registeel, and Obstagoon is going to close out the remainder of all three of his opponent's Pokemon. Going to this game, Obstagoon into Armored Mewtwo. This is not something we've seen a lot. Obstagoon has to be very careful of that matchup because of that dynamic punch. His opponent does decide to stay in here, so BHaz is going to fire off this Moonblast, try to nerf that Mewtwo, but it doesn't work. Out comes Shiftry here, and Cresselia has to be very careful of these foul plays, but the Moonblast can be just as deadly. This is a real knife fight between these two Pokemon here. He's going to go ahead and fire off the Moonblast there, and it does get shielded, but the Shiftry gets debuffed, so Cresselia really pulling through well. I really enjoy this pairing of Obstagoon and Cresselia. I know Cresselia is good, and a lot of people will comment and say, whatever you pair this monster with is going to make the team look good, and that's true to an extent, but I do like this kind of overlapping coverage and how the Cresselia helps against the fairy types as well, which Obstagoon is terribly weak to. He's going to go ahead and fire off another Moonblast here, and his opponent did swap into the Armored Mewtwo, but he does get debuffed. His opponent is out of shields. BHaz has to be careful of that Dynamic Punch, but it's just the Psy Strike, so that bait was successful. Going to go ahead and fire off a Night Slash here, and I'm not sure that this is quite enough, and it is not. Mewtwo gets off one more attack. Let's see how much damage this does. Dynamic Punch taking probably 65% of Obstagoon's health. So just keep that in mind. If you're going to bring Obstagoon, you could only tank one Dynamic Punch, and you have to be pretty healthy to do it. He is going to swap here into his Giratina, the Dragon Breath Giratina on the opposite side, which I prefer and enjoy, while BHaz has that faster charging Shadow Claw Giratina. He's going to get to those charge moves more quickly, so I believe he would seal that up, but out comes Shiftry. So BHaz did force swap out. He has lost a switch advantage at this point, allowing that Shiftry to come out. This is going to be a really hard match for BHaz to come back from. That Shiftry is going to bring down Giratina. Out comes the Obstagoon, and that Shiftry already has another attack. Leaf Blade is going to KO. GG's. Going to this match, Obstagoon into the Swampert lead. This is a very interesting one as well. As I mentioned in the first Obstagoon video, up there, you don't want to take more than one Hydro Cannon from a Swampert. He does swap into that Cresselia to try to catch the charge attack, but it doesn't come through. Opponent goes into Registeel, and this is not a good situation. You always hope that Cresselia can do a little bit of good here, maybe chip that Registeel down, maybe debuff it. That's always like the best case scenario, but his opponent only waited maybe a few seconds after he swapped, so once that swap becomes available to BHaz, he's only going to have probably about 5 to 6 seconds to really capitalize on that matchup with this Obstagoon. He comes right in there as soon as that switch timer is up, goes straight for the Night Slash, and does not get that first shield, but his opponent swaps as well. The switch clock was even closer than I predicted. Swampert comes in here and fires off double Hydro Cannons against Obstagoon. He does tank that first one there, not doing too much damage actually, maybe 35, maybe 40% damage. He's going to go straight here for the Night Slash and does not get the boost. Swampert going for another charge move here, and BHaz expending his final shield on Obstagoon. His opponent is up 2 shields. Let's see if he can turn this around. Out comes Alolan Muck. Alolan Muck, a staple in the Ultra League, especially early on. I'm seeing a little bit less of it. I think Obstagoon kind of maybe took that dark spotlight away from Muck, but it's still a wonderful Pokemon. As you can tell there, the Dark Pulse, though, not very effective against Obstagoon. He's going to absorb that cross chop with the first shield. Obstagoon gaining some energy here with the counters, and then goes for the Night Slash, taking that second shield. So BHaz has effectively evened the playing field in terms of shields. That's fine if the Muck spends his energy on the Dark Pulse, not a huge deal. Gonna come here with Cresselia, and very aggressive farming is actually gonna backfire on BHaz pretty badly. Dark Pulse gonna bring down that Cresselia, and then out comes Giratina. His opponent's last Pokemon is that weakened Registeel. This Registeel does have energy though, so I'm not entirely sure if the Giratina can bring this one home. It's going to be a very, very close game. He goes right for that Shadow Sneak as quickly as possible. I think he might need maybe 1 or 2 more to seal this up. Switch timer is ticking down as well, so he needs to keep his mind on the health bar there and try to maximize any kind of opportunity he has to win the game. Another Shadow Sneak coming through. Registeel faints, and the timer is up. Going into this match, Obstagoon lead into Escavalier. You do not want to go up against Escavalier with your Obstagoon because it's a bug steel type. That fighting type damage is just neutral, so it's not going to be as effective as you want, and those counters are going to add up really quickly. He does swap here into Cresselia, and this is okay, but this Escavalier is just such a great Pokemon. It straddles so many matchups in the Ultra League, and before the Ultra League came back, I was kind of looking at the PvP rankings, and it just does so well breaking apart these cores. Things like Cresselia and Registeel, where you've got the Mega Horn that does really well against Cresselia, and then the counter damage and the Drill Run that does really well against Registeel. Escavalier is just a great Pokemon to have, and nobody seems to be running Fire. I know there is some water users out there, mainly Swampert is probably the only water type you're going to see, maybe besides a Gyarados with Hydro Pump, but either way, as you can tell there, the Escavalier is going to counter down. Out comes Giratina, and here comes Gyarados. BHaz getting hard countered really badly here. As we already know, this Gyarados is going to have a favorable matchup against the Giratina, but he does make a wonderful swap to catch this crunch with the Obstagoon. So again, kind of creating space, making his opponent waste energy, all these things you really have to do when you're facing off against a team that hard counters your own. He is able to almost counter down this Gyarados. In comes the crunch. Obstagoon will survive, finally able to counter down Gyarados, and then BHaz is going to have to shield up this attack from the Escavalier. His opponent's last Pokemon is Granbull. This is the worst case scenario, battlers. If there's a Charmer in the back and you have adopted this team, you're running the Obstagoon, Cresselia, and Giratina. If you don't get your Cresselia on that Charmer, it's GG's. This Granbull is just so insanely aggressive. The damage output is too crazy. It's going to be able to charm down this team and win the game. Night has fallen and more Obstagoon battles are on the way. Battlers, if you've enjoyed this video, let me know down in the comments below. Let me know what you thought. I want to hear your thoughts on this Pokemon. If you think it's overhyped, if you think it's really good, or whatever your opinion is, just let me know. Leave me a like if you've enjoyed it, and then subscribe for tons of Go Battle League content coming out very soon. This Armored Mewtwo is going to fire off that Psy Strike there. BHaz using his first shield, but he's going to return fire here with his Night Slash, taking a little chunk out of the Armored Mewtwo. Armored Mewtwo is so much fun to play. I really enjoyed it in Season 1, and I have been using it in Season 2. It's kind of like a soft counter to everything, and it doesn't really hard counter anything except for fighters. With the introduction of Obstagoon, we might be seeing more fighters soon, but we'll have to wait and see how the meta changes over the coming weeks. He's able to counter it down, and out comes Snorlax. This tells me that his opponent does not have a strong counter to this Obstagoon. He does get the boost off the Night Slash, which is critical in this matchup, firing off that cross chop, and suddenly it's doing a ton of damage to the Snorlax. Gonna go ahead here and absorb this Body Slam, no problem at all, and go straight for another cross chop, straight for the kill. Snorlax is going to survive. Out comes Giratina, and he's going to go right for another Night Slash here. Again, keeping those super effective moves in mind. Takes almost half of Giratina's health. That is so absurd. Once that Obstagoon gets the boost, it is just so deadly. He is going to go for the Dragon Claw there, but not before the Giratina gets off one more charge attack. Will be another Dragon Claw here, and BHaz is going to return fire. I don't believe that this KOs, and it does not, but the subsequent Shadow Claw does. His opponent comes in with that Snorlax, and BHaz has enough energy for a Dragon Claw to wrap up this game. Going to this battle, Obstagoon versus Articuno. There's so many good leads in this video, so many good kind of expositions to show you how to play these different leads, and BHaz just does so well in all of them. His opponent does shield, and check that out, he does get the boost. So the Night Slash is going to give you the boost, the Icy Wind is going to debuff, but still, Obstagoon is such a threat here. Going to go ahead and fire off a Cross Chop and take his opponent's second shield. Investing both shields in the Articuno in the lead is such a risky move. I don't believe that I agree with it, but we'll see how BHaz plays this, and if it really hurts that trainer in the end, or if they are on a whole nother level and they know exactly what they're doing. He's going to go ahead here and absorb this third Icy Wind. Obstagoon still standing strong, goes right for this Night Slash. I think this will be enough, and it is. Obstagoon getting debuffed 3 times. Although it did get the boost, it gets debuffed 3 times and still wins the lead. Out comes the Swampert here, and BHaz goes right in Cresselia. He's going to take that Earthquake and then fire off the Moonblast. Gonna try to get to another Moonblast here, but Swampert is so fast. In comes that Giratina. I don't know if that was a great decision to make, but either way, that Moonblast does a ton of damage to Giratina, and it gets debuffed. So at this point, Giratina does drop that Shadow Sneak on the Cresselia, and then here comes the swap from BHaz. Trying to get a lot of utility out of his Pokemon here. I really appreciate the play. He does have a charge move ready on that Cresselia for when it comes back in. Gonna go ahead and take another Dragon Claw here because that Giratina did have some residual energy, and then he goes for a Dragon Claw of his own to put this Giratina out of its misery. A little undercharged there, but his opponent makes this swap. If this is Earthquake, it will KO. It is Earthquake, Giratina is out. BHaz going to come in here with his Cresselia, charging up a little extra energy, and then goes right for the Moonblast. I think he's going to try to double Moonblast here, but the Psycho Cuts are enough. Here we go with Obstagoon into Snorlax. This is a great lead for Obstagoon. There's nothing really in Snorlax's wheelhouse that's going to hit Obstagoon really hard except for Super Power. So if your opposing Snorlax stays in the match, you might be a little skeptical. Maybe it does have Super Power on it, but as you can see there, his opponent did fire off that Body Slam. That will go shielded, and then here comes a Cross Chop. That Snorlax is deep into the red. Let's see what this second attack is. BHaz opting not to shield, and it is Super Power. Look at that. Taking almost all of Obstagoon's health, but he still wins the lead. He is down a shield though, so he's going to go straight for a Night Slash here against the Giratina, and it does get shielded. Making the switch here to Cresselia, out comes Armored Mewtwo. So BHaz does have his Giratina in the back to deal with his opposing Giratina, but it is a Dragon Breath variant, so he's got to be very careful about how he manages that matchup. This Armored Mewtwo is going to fire off the Psy Strike, and Cresselia laughs at it. Not a whole lot of damage there. I do kind of appreciate how close this matchup is between these two Titans, but Cresselia is definitely going to win. That Moonblast, especially with its chance to debuff the opponent's attack, is just such a great attack. He's going to go here for another Moonblast after a few more Psycho Cuts, and this won't be enough to KO, but it does debuff that Mewtwo yet again. In comes the switch to Giratina. Can BHaz survive this attack? He decides to shield. He's got a little residual energy. He's going to go ahead and drop this first Moonblast. I'm not sure if he stays in for a second one, and he tries to. Let's see if he can get it. No, timing his swap perfectly though. He is going to catch this Dragon Claw with his own Giratina. Now at this point, this is a very, very close game. That Dragon Breath is going to do a little extra damage, but these Shadow Claws are going to charge more quickly. With the energy advantage that this Giratina has, it's going to be very, very tight. Pushing for that final Dragon Claw, BHaz is going to go ahead and fire this off. It does not bring down the Giratina, and he's able to KO. At this point, BHaz is going to decide to go in with his Cresselia. Out comes that Armored Mewtwo to drop this charge move on the Cresselia. And then in comes Obstagoon with virtually no health. I think this is GG's, and it is. Very, very, very close game. Going to this battle, again, Obstagoon into Armored Mewtwo, trying to avoid that Dynamic Punch. Let's see how he decides to play this out. Going straight for the Night Slash here, and he's going to Yep, stay in this matchup and then try to swap out to catch it. Counting those confusions really, really well. With all these different moves and their different paces, it can be a little bit difficult to kind of keep track of things. For example, I was trying to time my Snarls against a Swampert's Mud Shots tonight, and I did lose count a couple of times. It's just the turn speed is going to be a little bit different with each of these attacks. So when you get your Pokemon, when you get a new Pokemon on your team and you want to try it out and see how good it is, just be mindful of that and don't be too hard on yourself when your counts aren't perfect right off the bat. He's going to go straight for the Moonblast here against the Snorlax. Snorlax does not get debuffed. Those licks are adding up really quickly, but BHaz able to squeeze out one more Moonblast here. I don't think that will KO, but it does. It's very, very close. Here comes that Armored Mewtwo. And at this point, he comes in with his Giratina, trying to time the swap there again, but it doesn't quite go right for him. He's going to absorb that Psy Strike, no issue though. His opponent does make a beautiful swap though, catching this Dragon Claw with a healthy Swampert. And at this point, BHaz is going to decide to stay in and fire off one more Dragon Claw. Each player has 2 shields. That is crazy for this late in the match. BHaz is going to go ahead and expend his first shield here. And he does fire off another Dragon Claw, taking his opponent's first shield as well. So they are both down to 1 shield each. Going to go ahead and burn his second shield here to shield that Earthquake. Very, very critical there. If he would have landed the Earthquake, it definitely would have KO'd his Giratina. He gets 2 more Dragon Claws Shadow Claws worth of energy, and then goes right for a Dragon Claw here against the Armored Mewtwo. Drawing that final shield, in comes Obstagoon, and we know at this health range he can withstand a Dynamic Punch, but he gets off that Night Slash to wrap up this match. 2 more battles to go. Obstagoon into Snorlax. His opponent is going to make an immediate swap into his own Giratina. This is somehow not better for his opponent because he does have that Night Slash there on the Obstagoon, which is going to hit that Giratina super effective. This Giratina does fire up the Dragon Claw, not doing a whole lot of damage to Obstagoon. BHaz is going to make the swap though into his own Giratina, realizing that his Obstagoon has 2 positive matchups here with his opponent's Pokemon and wanting to avoid that his Giratina lines up with that Snorlax later. Because he does have that Shadow Claw variant, he has to be very mindful of lining up with normal types because you're not going to do a whole lot of damage to them with your fast moves. His opponent is going to fire off that Dragon Claw, but here comes one more from BHaz. I think that might have been an over tap because he does not charge it at all. His opponent is going to think things over, but the important part is that BHaz won the switched in matchup, so he's got a really good position here, especially because his opponent brings in a Togekiss. So Togekiss is a charmer that we haven't seen very often. I know earlier in the video we did see Granbull as a charmer, which is very effective. I think Clefable is a little more prominent. He does swap here into his Obstagoon to catch this Snorlax, and as long as he can keep his Cresselia lined up with that Togekiss, I think he's got a chance. He's going to shoot out that Body Slam there and go for a Night Slash against the Snorlax. His opponent does not shield, but he doesn't get the boost either, just trying to get this Snorlax out of the way and save that final shield for his matchup against the Togekiss. But look at that, superpower taking out Obstagoon. In comes the Cresselia. Snorlax gets to another charge move, and this is absolutely the worst case scenario for BHaz. Able to barely farm down that Snorlax, but he's got to be very mindful of his health. Those charms do chunk away, and they could KO this Cresselia pretty quickly. He's going to have to shield up this charge attack, absolutely, but I don't think he's going to be able. Oh my gosh, this Togekiss just got the boost as well. This game is GG's. The Cresselia is just too weak, and those charms are going to devastate. GG's. Going to the final battle of the video, Obstagoon into that Escavalier again. BHaz got to get out of there immediately. Out comes Cresselia, and to answer is a shiny Licky. This thing is so funny looking. That gold color is just so obnoxious, even more obnoxious than it normally is. This Cresselia is going to go ahead and shield up because that Licky does have access to Shadow Ball. So very good move there by BHaz shielding that. Although it's not stab, it would take a huge chunk out of Cresselia. I think you're going to see that in just a moment. Not going to beat this Licky to the race either. This thing charges so quickly. The Lick Boys are so overpowered. Shadow Ball taking a big chunk, but BHaz is able to squeeze one more Moonblast out of this Cresselia. Still not debuffing the Licky, and he is able to farm down. Now at this point, Licky does have access to Earthquake as well. Obstagoon not going to shield that Body Slam because usually you have Body Slam in a heavy type attack, something like an Earthquake or a Shadow Ball. In comes the Escavalier, and he goes right for the Night Slash, but he's got to get out of this matchup. Going into his Giratina here, and he's trying to dance around the situation. Opponent doing a really curious move here, staying in with their Escadrille, or Escavalier, excuse me, and then out comes the Armored Mewtwo. I think switching into the Armored Mewtwo earlier might have been a good choice. You do want to save that Escavalier to keep it as healthy as possible, because with the shields down and little energy, that Obstagoon can just drop those cross chops repeatedly. Here comes the charge move from the Armored Mewtwo. Giratina surviving, not a big deal. Trying to get to a Shadow Sneak to possibly bring this within KO range, but it is still alive. Out comes the Obstagoon, not wasting any time, not allowing Mewtwo to farm. In comes a Psy Strike, really clutch call by BHaz there. If that was a dynamic punch, this game would be over. Out comes a Scavalier, and he is going to barely counter it down. In comes that Armored Mewtwo, and it's up to Giratina. What a close match. Battlers, if you enjoyed this video, let me know down in the comments below. I tried to showcase tons of lead scenarios for you, give you a few tips on how to play Obstagoon in the Ultra League, and I really appreciate you watching till the end. I'll see you in the next one.